Hello and welcome to something I want to try on this channel. I just got home from seeing Antman and the Wasp and I thought I would play Enter the Gungeon so you can get a look at what that game is like and I could just spew my thoughts about Antman. Let's go. So Antman and the Wasp was an interesting film, to say the least. When I first heard about Antman coming out, like way back when it first got announced, I was kind of interested how they'd introduce a character like Antman who I'd at least never heard of before, and I wasn't that huge on comics anyway, like growing up, but I sort of watched the superhero films and enjoyed them enough. And even now, like, I don't read comics. I mean, I definitely read comics a lot more when I was a kid, to be fair. But Ant-Man I remember hearing about when it got announced, and I was kind of like, how are they going to introduce this character and make it work in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that is being set up? And, you know, I watched the first Ant-Man, and I was pleasantly surprised. I think Ant-Man became a character I was quite invested in. I think the fun kind of nature of the first Ant-Man film really drew me in, and I was quite curious to see where his character went. So when, you know, he shows up in Civil War, I was like, oh, this is so cool, and it was fun. And then we kind of roll on to the point of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I remember seeing trailers for it, and I was kind of like, this will be okay. You know, it's kind of what I thought. Ant-Man, like, on reflection, Ant-Man was fine. It's not the best film in the world. It's fun, but there's a lot of issues I have with the scripting and the acting in many places. I think is quite poor. There's a thing with Ant-Man 2 as well, Ant-Man the Wasp. A lot of the acting was questionable in scenes, to say the least. Like, it was fine for the most part. But I feel like Ant-Man as a franchise is, like, the most poorly acted set of movies in the MCU. But that's just my opinion, personally. I didn't really know what to expect. I think I sort of went into it and I was kind of ready to just have fun, which the film certainly is. To its credit, the film is a lot of fun, and you know, you can just go and watch it and enjoy seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp, you know, grow and shrink, and the fight scenes are quite well shot and choreographed, and like there's a lot of manipulating the size. There's a bit where I think it's from the trailers as well that the Wasp, she's having a knife thrown at her and she sort of shrinks and runs along the blade of the knife, and that's a really cool shot. I think it's a really interesting way to sort of show off her powers while still making the fight engaging. But I think that fight scene at the start of the film, when you see the Wasp fight for the first time, was like the most interesting of all the fight scenes in the film. And like the Wasp herself is incredibly underutilized. I feel like they were like, oh, we have this character and she needs to be in the film, so they do that. But then as soon as Paul Rudd's character comes back in and he's like the focus of everything, her role in the her role in everything becomes quite diminished. I just feel it's a bit of a shame because her fighting style is a lot more interesting out of the two of them, and I'd rather see her fighting than I would Paul Rudd, because we've seen him fight. We've seen Ant-Man do Ant-Man things in 2 movies prior, and I was a bit miffed that she got as little screen time as she did. In terms of the plot, like, it was fine. I think what benefited the film was that it was its own self-contained story and didn't tie itself too heavily to Infinity War. I'll kind of get onto that more later, but I liked that, you know, things kind of pick off from where Ant-Man was in Civil War. There's a bit of fallout after him going to fight with Captain America in Germany, and that is a big plot point as to why he and Hank Pym aren't on speaking terms. Seeing them sort of, seeing Hank and Paul Rudd, I forget his name, Ant-Man, seeing those two sort of rekindle, and the Wasp and Ant-Man sort of rekindle a relationship is nice enough. It's fine. The romance subplot is barely there, and for the better, really. I kind of hate when romance subplots are really forced into Marvel movies. I think they just kind of lower the tone of them. I think it was something I really didn't care for in Guardians 1, when they had Star-Lord and Gamora really sort of pushed together in a romantic way. And I think Guardians 1 at least benefited from dropping that aspect. In terms of the way the film is shot, I think a lot of the action was kind of choreographed quite nicely, but at the same time, a lot of the general shots were just quite boring. I think I'm sort of stuck on this idea that, you know, the original Ant-Man was going to be directed by Edgar Wright, and you kind of think, oh well, you know, what could it have been had he been at the helm of the project, and how different it could have been. But at the same time, you have to still take the film for what it is. You can't just criticize it for being something it's not, effectively. But what it was fine. It was very obvious they had to make a film to sort of meet this quota of getting stuff out and making sure Ant-Man fits into the narrative of what's going on with everything in regards to Infinity War. Michelle Pfeiffer's storyline, or her role in the film, is kind of completely redundant. Michelle Pfeiffer is not a character in this film. She is a plot device that only serves to come in to sort of remedy the problems in the last, like, 4 seconds of the film, and that kind of irked me. I wish that she'd got more screen time. I think the scene where, this is a bit of a spoiler, but the scene where she inhabits Ant-Man's body and speaks to Hank and the Wasp through Ant-Man is it was a really lovely scene. It was really well done, and I think that was one of the highlights of the film for me. You sort of see this juxtaposition of them being like, I don't know what is going on, but at the same time, they're so happy to see their partner and their mother, respectively, again. And I appreciated that for what the film did. I also think the scene, again, a bit of a spoiler. Yeah, the scene when Hank goes between the molecules or whatever, and he's about to find Michelle Pfeiffer, but he doesn't, and he starts to go crazy. And he has this sort of epiphany moment where everyone starts to confront him. I think that was really well shot, and I really appreciated that scene, at least. And then, you know, Michelle Pfeiffer appears and fixes his mind or whatever, which later alludes to her fixing the bad guy at the end of the film, or the bad girl. I think my main qualm with the film was that it was just fine. This is sort of thing with at least Marvel films where, you know, it's very obvious that they're going to be the same kind of story and the same beats over and over again, because there's only so much you can do with, you know, a superhero plot structure. But I think Ant-Man and the Wasp really show kind of how washed up this storytelling mechanic is getting. I also I think the scene when, I forget all the names of the characters. This is the thing, like, I'm rubbish with names of characters anyway, but I don't know, I just don't remember any of, like, the names of the characters from this film. I don't know if that's on my part or the film's part, but Ant-Man's, like, top stooge guy who does all the funny talking scenes. I feel like they were sort of put in to be like, hey, you remember that bit in the first film when we did this? Gonna do it again. And I think it was a lot more interestingly executed this time around, but it definitely felt like it was just a thing of, do you remember that happened? Because it's gonna happen again. And that just felt, I don't know, it felt like really tacked on this time, because it just didn't have the same appeal as it did in the first film. I don't know. There was a lot of cool moments with the shrinking and growing and stuff. I think all the car chases when the Wasp shrinks her car and then, like, grows it again to, like, knock a bad guy's car out of the way or something. I think that was a really cool thing to do. I think all those shots were done quite nicely as well. Like when they're going down that road, the really curvy road, and like all the roads getting blown up because the car's like blowing up on top of it or whatever. That was really nice. I think that was a really cool scene. I think, like, this is the thing. I had fun watching this movie, but it definitely just wasn't good. No, it was good. It just wasn't, like, as good as it could have been. I was having a talk about this with my friend Tom, or My Cup of Tea on YouTube. He was saying how low stakes the film was. And I was kind of saying, like, anything after Infinity War is always going to feel so much more lackluster, you know, in comparison. Whatever stakes there are in a film aren't going to be as potent as the death of half the population. I guess my point is that this film was fine, but it's definitely not a must-see. Even in regards to, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like, this is a major spoiler for the end of the movie. The post-credits scene, I felt everything that I really liked about the film happened as soon as the credits started rolling. There was a really cool scene when, like, the initial credits roll. There was really nice, like, freeze frames of all, like, the key moments in the film, but recreated with little figurines that you see in, like, model villages or, like, model railways and stuff. And I think that was such a nice touch. I think it really brought to life a lot of the moments in the scene in a much more dynamic way than the film did itself. I kind of almost wish that the film had been done using like little figurines or something. And then the post-credits scene, obviously the film has to tie into Infinity War because that's all Marvel, you know, that's Marvel's big thing now. They've got Captain Marvel coming whenever that does, and they've got Avengers 4. The moment when all the characters get like Thanos poofed was fine. It was, you know, expected to happen. There was at some point going to be at least one of the main cast was going to like disappear because they have to, because that's what happens in the film. But I kind of wish not all of them had disappeared. I think it would have been fine if Hank and the Wasp had poofed, but you're left with like Michelle Pfeiffer and Ant-Man, and then you have this really interesting combination of characters that don't really know each other but are suddenly forced to work together to get through whatever situation they're in. And you also have the interesting dynamic of Michelle Pfeiffer, who's just returned to Earth after like spending 30 years in the quantum realm, and she's trying to figure out how to adjust back to life on Earth. You know, that's never going to happen because I guess it's, you know, too much to follow. I don't know. But I just think there was something lost, or there could have been something more interesting done with the dynamic between the characters, rather than them all just getting poofed because plot convenience, I guess. That's a big snake. Oh, I'll do my big gun. Amazing. So yeah, the game, like, to actually talk about this game that I'm playing, it's full of like gun puns. That's kind of the whole. Oh, shut up, light. And that's like a lot of comedy. The game's really funny. Like, ooh. Antman The Wasp as a film, I think was fine. I certainly don't think it's, by any stretch of the imagination, should it be like, is it one of the best Marvel films? You can tell it's very much done just because they have to incorporate Ant-Man into this greater overarching story in Infinity War and all that kind of stuff. Oh gosh, what's that? Skull Spitter. Amazing. But even so, like, if you don't really like Ant-Man as a character, you can entirely give this film a miss. I know some Marvel movies are a lot more tied into the overall universe than others, and I think if you're not fussed about Ant-Man or what he's doing during Infinity War, you can entirely skip this film and you would miss nothing. You could just watch the post-credit scene and you would gain as much knowledge about the overarching MCU story as you'd need to. There's nothing in the main film that makes you need to see it. But if you like the character of Ant-Man and you like the characters established in the film, then go and watch it. It's fine. You know, I'm not going to stop you doing that. Let me know if you liked hearing me ramble about a film. If you did, I'll actually like make something more structured and play a game that is less demanding on me paying attention, so I can actually think about what I'm saying rather than just spewing words for 20 minutes. Thank you for watching if you if you even got this far. And I shall see you later, alligator.